My name is Marjana Karzek, and I am Senior Android Engineer at Get Your Guide, and this is my colleague Benedict Pregler, also Senior Android Engineer at Get Your Guide. Quick words about Get Your Guide. I'm going to say this quite often in this talk, I guess. So we are a marketplace for travel experiences, and we have more than 75K experiences that you can explore during your travels. And in the recent funding round, we have acquired 200 million in funding, so going strong there. We have 17 different regional offices, where mostly our destination managers are working their magic to bring more experiences to our platform. And we are, as an engineering team, mostly in Berlin and in Zurich. We do have an Android native app. Here you have some impressions of how it looks like, but I hope also that you're all downloading it afterwards. We're having the classic ones like Kotlin and clean architecture in there. We're using Coin for dependency injection, Jetpack Compose in our UI. Also producing some feedback somewhere. I'm not sure where to stand. Yeah, coroutines coming with Kotlin, obviously, room in the database, MVI and presentation layer, our custom navigation, but there's a huge but associated to this, and this is our wall of shame. So while we have mostly Kotlin, we have still 0.2% in Java, and also we are not proud, but we have a lot of reactive X still lingering in our code base. You might have recognized here again our custom navigation library, and why it is on both slides, you're probably gonna know after this talk. We are still stuck with a lot of data binding. We're moving away from it. But as you can see, even when you're trying to reach maintainability, it's a lot of work and it's a progress. So Compose is replacing our XMLs, but still a lot of work to do. All right. Handing over to Vinno.
So let's start with an experiment. So if you want, you can close your eyes to imagine it a little bit better. But imagine a junior dev is joining your team, and you need to show around the code base. So the architecture, the libraries you're using, how you're doing stuff. So how often do you need to say, we are doing it here differently, or that's special here, or this is not how it should be, but... And when you think about your code base, and every time you need to say this, I mean, it's kind of tech debt, because it could be better, it should be better, but perhaps you don't have the time to do it. We want to show you how you could perhaps get to this change, and how you could tackle this problem. Of course, it would be easier when we could just start over, rewriting everything. Everyone wants to do this. It's like Christmas. You can start a new project. You can select, check which libraries you want to use, languages, all the stuff. And that's where we start. For example, when you want to start a new library, a new project, it's quite easy. But I assume a lot of you are working in a team with an existing code base, with some legacy code, with some better code. I don't know. I hope it's good code. So the technology which is already picked is there, and you need to work with it. Either you are happy with it, there was a good decision in the past, or you're not so happy, and you're like, oh man, why do I need to work with this? I want to use this library. It would be better. It would so much better. But we stick with it. So you're forced to use it. And then you also think like, man, why have they picked this library? Why have they picked this technology? It was such a bad decision. But you always need to emphasize they did, or someone did a decision in the past with a given context, with a given knowledge level, bias, of course, and they thought it's going to be a good decision for the future. And you always need to think, when you are now picking something, it could be a bad decision in the future. For example, a few years ago, data binding was a big thing. Everyone wants to use it. And after a while, it was like, perhaps it was not the best choice. But back then, everyone was like, yeah, let's use it. It's going to be super cool. So always think about this. Also, your decision could be a bad one in the future. So, and also, don't rant about the past. Try to make it better.
You probably all know this moment when you're looking at bad code and you're like, who made this decision? And you go to look at git blame and it was you. That's what he's talking about.
Exactly. And also picking something is always you want to push. So it's your knowledge, your bias, what you want to use, but also you're working with a team. It's also depending on the team knowledge, team bias, and also the team needs. So what your business needs to push your app. So we always want to have a good decision, but we need to emphasize this could be a bad decision in the future. For example, in the past, there was this Java versus Kotlin fight. There's now a clear winner. So all these fights are coming over and over again. Every year there's something new. Should we replace it? Should we stick with it? We have this every year. The mobile, in the mobile world, it's insane how fast things change. We always need to adapt, but we always need to make sure that we are happy, that the team is happy, that we can move forward. We don't need to just pick the newest library because it's the new shit. We always need to think about, can we use it in the future? Will this block us something like this? So some criteria can always be what I already said, the team knowledge, the team confidence, team bias, and the problem you want to solve. And of course, other criteria are perhaps you want to stick vanilla as possible, because there's a lot of documentation out there. You can ask ChatGPT, you can check Stack Overflow. So when a new joiner is coming, they know where to find documentation. When you have a custom library, one person did a few years ago, this person already left the company. Like, okay, you need to look at code, no documentation around. What should I do? Don't feel pressured to use the latest technology. There's always a new library. You can always change it. You will never end. Then also reflect your own bias. I mean, we are now here at the conference. We are seeing new stuff, learning new stuff. We are super hyped after this conference. Also, don't do conference-driven development. I know we are super energized here learning new stuff, but let it settle in and then think again about if this would be really useful for your code, for your team. And of course, when you pick something, it can fail. And it's okay to fail. So when you add something, and after a while you're like, that wasn't the best decision, remove it, tell to the team, hey, this wasn't the best decision, I'm sorry, it can happen, and then move on. As I just said, it's often a team decision also to move into a certain directory, so you should have a team app vision. So you need to rally your team behind something so you can push together something in one direction. Because without a team, you can try to do something, but when no one is picking it up, then you have it in one area of your code, and that's it. No one will embrace it, no one will use it, and then after a while, it will be tech debt. So you need to move into the right direction together. Otherwise, person A will refactor everything into one direction, person B will refactor everything to the other direction, anger will rise, it will lead to a toxic environment, someone will leave the company or something like this, or you're not happy anymore. This is a really bad spot to be in, and try to avoid it. So the best thing is to come with your team together and check if you have the same vision in the team. And for this, it's good to have a first meeting and check what is the current state, what do we have? And then really ask a question, what do we like, what do we dislike, where we can improve, what we can change. Shouldn't be just one question, should be a set of questions, so you really know in which area something is good, something is bad, and get all the opinions from the team. And then you will directly see where's some common ground. Where you have a common ground and everyone agrees, it's easily to move forward. It might surprise you that you agree on something, perhaps not. It might surprise you that you disagree on something, like, okay, how we can move forward. That's gonna be the harder way, when you have someone having a really hard opinion and don't want to move an inch. First thing is, don't blame this person in a meeting with 10 other people. Do a one-on-one afterwards. Try to find out why a person doesn't want to use something, and really take it seriously. Don't play the blame game. It will lead only that this person will go into defense and won't change anything. And then also think about, when you found out something, we want to improve it, what would the team like to use? I mean, there are different ways to improve, but that's then the next question. What should we do? Is there already an agreement? Is there something to discuss? Then you need also create a, for example, proof of concept. So 2 devs are gonna do a proof of concept, and then the team can decide which proof of concept to use. And then you can again agree and move on. The next is of course the effort. I would say plan for a year or half a year, something like this. You need a lot of time. Perhaps you don't get the time from management, so you need to work on it here and there. You see our roadmap for this year, we are planning more like quarters, what we want to have in 3 months. And this is already tough with the work we normally have. We get some more time, but it also takes some time to embrace change. Then also find out what the impact for business is. Marjana will later talk about this, because when you go to your manager and say, hey, I refactored this and now we are using MVI instead of MVVM, your manager will say, and now? So there should also be something for the business in it, a bigger vision. For example, at the top, all the yellow stuff is around release automation. A year ago, we released our app every 2 weeks, and we wanted to move this to 1 week. And for this, we needed to automate a lot of stuff. And so we are like, okay, we need to write tests to have weekly releases. So there was this carrot in front of the manager. Hey, we want to have this, but we need to do this first. So you get your time to work on technical things, and there's a bigger gain for the business at the end. And then write everything down in a nice roadmap that your team agrees on, that you also have something on paper, and not just in this meeting half a year ago we said this. No one will remember. Have a meeting. Sorry. And then also people can comment, like Google Docs or whatever you use, and add some information there. Also, think about the managers. They are living more like in the future. They less care about now, but they care more about what is in 6 months. So what will this change in 6 months, in 12 months, so they can calculate a little bit with it. Also a little bit more about this later. And then, yeah, get your commitment from the team that this is your vision as a team, everyone agrees, and then you can move on.
Yeah, great. You have your team on board, everyone is aligned, everyone wants to move in the same direction, everyone wants to build the perfect application, obviously. So now you're hitting the first roadblock, the managers, the leadership. And they're like, yeah, sounds great, MVI, and all these other buzzwords I've never heard about, because obviously not every manager understands us tech people, right? Not every engineering manager is actually coming from an app background, and from my personal experience, most engineering managers come from different areas like back-end and front-end or web development, so it's always a challenge to make them understand what app engineering is all about. So let's change the perspective. Let's understand the managers first. What is their need? What are they aiming with their job for? They're not really into the best practices. They're interested in what is the impact on the company. What is the impact on the company metrics in specific? So when you are spending your time on refactoring your application, what is the return of investment? They know usually that it is a bet, and they are willing to take it, but they want to make it an educated one and a good one. So Understand how the business makes profit. Understand what is your company-specific metric to measure the success of the company. Because, for example, it is for us much easier to make changes to our checkout process and improve there the stability and consistency than to some smaller feature that is currently not being actively used or not as actively used. But the checkout process is directly connected to our money making, so any change going in there needs to be solid and convincing, but also the managers are more willing to actually take that risk there. So elaborate on the cost. There's on the one hand the cost of working with the existing code base and working with the legacy, and also the cost of changing to a new and better technology. That can be maybe a little bit unintuitive for an engineer, but actually managers are interested also in numbers in hiring. So for example, when you're telling your managers, we are having trouble finding new engineers for our technology, no one is using Java anymore, no one cares about Java anymore, everyone wants to see us using Kotlin, then you're going to have a very easy discussion there and being like, okay, we're going to move into that direction. But also for other libraries, the tech world is evolving fast, so there are going to be very interesting challenges out there. If you're not even keeping up with your tech stack, the managers will see that in the numbers. So maybe schedule right away meeting with an HR person or HR representative and check also your hiring processes for how many people drop out when, for what reasons. That might give you actual, concrete, measurable numbers on why you need to change your tech stack. And cost is usually, though, measured in our salary multiplied the hours that we spend on things. And this also starts in onboarding the engineers. So how long, like maybe they think back of the experiment in the beginning, how long does it take to onboard an engineer in your company compared to if you would have a more modern and more maintained tech stack? So next is then working with the existing code base. How much time does go in there? How much time do you spend on actually maintaining it? And how much time does it take you to build features on top of it? Versus maybe as an alternative, implement the feature right away in the new stack. Ongoing change is better because in the end, you're gonna block yourself from building features on top. Because when you only have one person knowing, for example, how the legacy code works, how your custom navigation library works in the end, and no one is daring to implement it or use it, then you're going to have a problem. And your managers love the word or the term bus factor. So meaning, if your engineer would be, like this one engineer would be hit by a bus tomorrow, how many other people could actually back up this person? And they're very scared about this being super low, so if this is 0 or 1, you have a very good convincing point of why you need to improve and change there. Because in the end, this is also increase the confidence of the team. The confidence in building new features, the confidence in estimating the complexity of your tasks. And in the end, you need to talk in their language. Also in representing the tasks that you need to do. So coming back to the app vision, you already have put out the roadmap. You already have your roadmap items in place. Convert them into epics, convert them into stories, convert them into tasks. Make it really clear how much impact this specific epic has. And then estimate the complexity because they're really interested in how long things are going to take, right? You have to manage your refactoring. Basically, we are the product owners of our code base. So take a look at what your product owners are doing. It's always a good guide to take some examples of how to communicate to your manager in what terms. So yeah, I know we all hate it to create tickets, but when talking to your managers, that's the way to go. Here are some specific metrics that we have also, that we are using in our daily life. So any company-specific metrics you can gather, go for them. If you have specific numbers on how much time it has been taking to develop in the existing code base, meaning working hours, meaning actual salaries, go for it. Any hours spent, bus factor, our new favorite buzzword now. Any numbers on crashes? How many crashes have you experienced with your current legacy code, with your current library that you want to replace? How many bugs have been maybe also reoccurring? How many hotfixes did you have to do? Check the complexity in working with the status quo or working with a new implementation and implementing the new one. And my favorite underrepresented metric, hiring. Okay. Now that we have the managers on board, let's assume they were like, wow, great job, love the metrics, love the bus factor. Let's implement the change. This starts with the team. So when you're introducing a new library, you need to get the Android team on board. You usually have some person bringing up a topic, and they're really, really interested in it. They really want to be the expert, and they really go into it. Maybe even they have heard a talk at the conference before, and they want to be driving this initiative. This person needs to develop a bit more, becoming the expert for the team, and also becoming the owner, right? This person will take over the role of the product owner in the long run. We have, for example, for Jetpack Compose, not needed to be doing a proof of concept, because there was so much information out there that this would, for us, was clear that when we replace the XML, it's going to work. But for more complex topics, like maybe if we would be replacing our navigation library, we would have to do a proof of concept. So this expert would probably take a smaller feature, would take a smaller scope, and then come up with actual concrete information about how this can work in our code base. Next step would be then the integration plan, because you need to really be then in detail what steps do we need, what steps do they need to take in order to achieve that goal, and what milestones need to be reached. Because as we said before, for some things you might have to first add tests, or for some other things you might have to first remove something else, a different dependency, and those all go into this integration plan. With our Java classes, we are probably going to be very detailed and list the classes that are left over in the ticket, or in a ticket each, and then we're going to have to tackle it. Not proud. Yeah, because then the next thing to do is allocating the resources. Sometimes you might have a smaller project, sometimes it's just about removing 5 Java classes, and maybe the expert can do that, or maybe the team is just going to be like, okay, I'm going to spend like an hour today and I'm going to get rid of it, I'm going to support. But for others, you might have to be presenting yourself as a team, as the Android team. You might have to go to the engineering managers, to the leadership, and actually be like, the Android team needs these resources, make sure that we get them. We need to move them forward. When you did the groundwork from before of actually making sure that they are convinced, they're more likely to give the resources to you. But sometimes it still happens to us that we need to go to single engineering managers specifically, and then it's talking about priorities rather than talking about how impactful something is. You need to be really clear about, okay, does this feature need to take priority over the refactoring or not? How maybe can it contribute to their priority? Just make sure that the business goals don't suffer. Sometimes we also have to take a step back. And then make sure that the Android team is on board regarding their knowledge. So with Jetpack Compose, for example, because it was so new when we wanted to move to it, our team had not the knowledge to actually apply it. So we had a great plan, we had a great resources allocated, and then not much moved. Nothing changed really. And then we have to go back in and check what's happening, maybe do a little bit of a check-in with your teammates, and then figure out what's happening there, why is it not working. And then the alternatives might be to write tutorials proactively, or actually do workshops so everyone can be on board. And this is going to be something that is also going to follow us through this presentation. Before you're going to be refactoring, you also have to check your test coverage. So our testing strategy is having unit tests for all units, obviously, but they're not very helpful with refactoring, because when you touch a class, when you touch a unit, you're also usually touching the unit test with it. So they are not going to be a reliable source for making sure that the project is working still afterwards. We are also running, or we're also implementing screenshot tests with Paparazzi. to be able to make sure that the UI is going to look exactly the same after our refactor efforts. Because this is the first thing that people are going to notice, and the product owners are going to notice when the UI looks different. They're going to be like asking questions, and we don't want that. For features and for edge cases, we usually have UI tests. We're writing them with UI testless, which was a library developed by Benedict. So check it out. Make sure to check it out on GitHub, on Get Your Guide GitHub, because with that we actually were able to decrease the amount of time to write the UI test, which is I'm not going to say the words now, but everyone knows what pain that is. Yeah, and last but not least, we're also adding end-to-end tests, which are just checking the happy path and the most important features of our application, including the checkout flow, to make sure any refactoring efforts are not going to be negatively impacting our application. When you're asking for resources, there are kind of two approaches to this. One is to ask for dedicated time, dedicated bandwidth, to check whether maybe you can spend every Friday afternoon on it. Maybe your team is working better with this, knowing that the manager is going to leave them in peace. It's also helpful to go there again in as the Ender team as a whole, maybe elect a representative in whatever form that would be. But also, we have been working a lot with hack days, which we do every 2 months for 2 days. And also every other month, we are doing focus days where we are exclusively focusing on any Android-related things. The alternative is to, or maybe this is better to be a combined approach also, which we're mostly doing, is to work on the refactoring while you're working on the features. So I'm going to quote here my manager, and I hope next time I need to refactor something, he's going to not be like, oh, no, I never said this, because we have it on record now. He said it's always OK to increase the scope by roughly 5%. So if you need to do some refactoring and it's having an equally cost or 5% more, and you want to sneak in some more tasks there, 5% is your average range there. But maybe you can negotiate a better one. So again, here, use the language of the managers. Make sure that they understand what the impact is and what the complexity of things are. Either way, make sure that you're adding your roadmap items to the OKRs of your company and that your maintenance projects are inside of the roadmaps of the teams, because then they commit to it, and the success of the team is also being measured, including your maintenance projects. And I'm going to start sounding like a broken record here. Sneak in as much tests as you can. So we have decided with our teams that every task that we do also needs to have the equivalent of unit tests. So if we're adding one file, we're adding one file with unit tests. If we're adding another class, then we're adding more. That's the definition of done, which is another term that the product owners especially like to use for our tickets. And add more tickets if needed to the stories, to the epics, for example, for UI tests and end-to-end tests, because those are usually not associated to just one task, but they're like done when the feature is done, right? This will help you with refactoring in the future and will give you more confidence also that your refactoring is not breaking much. Yeah, and then we always decide that we want to have the new features that we implement already in the new tech stack that the team has decided. So there's no new introduction of tech debt. It means you do have different states in the application, and that makes it a little bit more difficult sometimes to understand what is the current status of the application. But make sure to not introduce new tech debt, because it's just going to create more work in the future, and your integration plan is not going to work out anymore. And then once you have implemented it, when you're happy with your results, you also need to make sure that no one goes in and is like, oh, let's do it all over again, and not change everything and introduce new tech debt. So one thing to do is to, no one likes this word. I'm just gonna go around it, right? Create more visibility somehow for the Android team. What we do is we document all our decisions in our README. It's our single source of truth for the tech stack. And it's basically our manifest for how our application is supposed to be developed. And it's also used for the onboarding. So if someone is like unsure about what technology to use when they're joining the company, they can always refer back to the README. And also in discussions on pull requests, our README is our source of truth for that. Make sure to deprecate components that you're not supposed to use anymore when you are in the process of migrating. Deprecate annotation might be a good helper here, but also reference in there always what alternative to use. And we have this year also identified for us Detect as our custom rules for Detect as a great tool to make sure that, for example, UI regression is not happening. We are having a UI component library, and we are continuously developing components. And especially for smaller components like buttons and for checkboxes and for like switches, it's very convenient to identify whether a different import was used. And then you can go and say, okay, this detect rule is going to catch this, and the merge is going to be prevented. So no new tech debt is being introduced there. And hopefully, I'm going to spend some time this year to also add AndroidLint. I heard there are some great talks on this here, so I'm going to check that out. Next step is to try to automate as much as you can, because it makes you save so much time, right? We're also using static code analysis, using detect again, and hopefully then lint in the future, to make sure that our default, like the detect default options are being applied, and common mistakes are being prevented, but also our custom rules come in play here. And then there's this last one, probably everyone knows. It's Dependabot or any other library similar for our version updates, so we don't have to keep an active eye on it. We're using our CI/CD again for our tests. So we are having a very nice pre-commit hook who is checking our detect rules and making sure that our code is always nicely formatted, so there's no code being merged that is not compliant with our rules. And when we are opening a PR, we're using Bitrise in our case. We're running our tests only for the affected modules. We're having a library from a previous colleague of us who open sourced that library to check what modules were affected, and then it helps us just running the test for it. This also goes for end-to-end tests, and we're also checking for test coverage to make sure that not less tests are being there than we wanted to have in the first place. So this is for just the pull requests, and it's going to enable us to have faster feedback loops, because then you don't wait forever for the tests to finish for no reason. For our important pull requests or the release itself, for example, for the Dependabot pull request, we always run all tests, just to make sure, because it's just such an intense change and such an important release, that we're not breaking too much. We're also using our CI/CD in a way that we're running parallel builds, parallel tasks. For example, we're running our static code analysis, the unit test, and the screenshot test in the first round parallel. And once those succeed, we also run then the UI test and end-to-end test in parallel. That saves also valuable credits in case you need to check whether you need to make sure that you are not exceeding costs there. And then you kind of need to create more metrics. So always make sure that you're monitoring your application extensively. Check how the impact on the numbers is after and compared to the before numbers, before the refactoring happened. Because all these numbers are going to generate you more metrics, more information, more arguments when you are talking about the next refactoring task. And then an important task is to establish a culture of continuous change. We do have a forum where we are coming together as, we call it guild, so we have established a guild in our company. But usually as soon as you have more than two or more than one Android engineer, you're having an Android team for sure. So at least come together as an Android team. We do this every week for an hour, and then we are sharing new information, new challenges that we ran in, new whatever was read in a newsletter or was heard in a podcast, or we're probably gonna hear some nice talks next week about what happened at the DroidCon, especially by our associate. And so we're making sure that we continuously are in discussion about what has changed, how this can impact the company, and that we are creating this mindset of how impactful is it, what are the metrics that we're measuring this by. And we do collaborate as a guild a lot. So we do the hack days, we do the focus days, and we do a lot of pairing too. That all make sure that we're all sharing the knowledge and that we're all keeping in discussion and an ongoing change process. And then the next thing is when you have deprecated one library, one feature, whatever it was, celebrate the failure of that. Celebrate that the thing is not working anymore and you got rid of it. So make sure that you're sharing the learning. Like, what are you not supposed to do next time? What is the things that you learned that were great also, but weren't like presented with this approach anymore, and how the new implementation is serving you much better. There's this important mentality that you need to generate in your company, which is everyone can change everything. Because we have a guild, we do not just invite the Android team, but especially our marketing managers often in our meeting is very into Android development. And usually comes with, oh, I've seen this thing and I really want to have this in our application. Can we maybe use a hack day or focus day? So everyone can bring their opinions, everyone can bring their ideas. And this goes beyond also, beyond the Android team. Support each other. Not everyone has to have the same interests, the same skill set. Leverage that everyone has different ideas, different expertises, so you have different experts for different things within your company. And what we also do, we have an iOS guild and an Android guild, and then we have a native apps guild together, which is used to share knowledge also to the iOS devs. So they might have also taken some of our advice in the past, but they are probably very likely to say they didn't. And then, very important, last thing to do, celebrate the success. And this is not only within the Android team. This is also going beyond that. Share with the company what you did. Make your achievements known, because those are all going to be great examples of why you need to continuously change more and go with the flow of new technologies. Make sure to make the impact known and the profit of it. I've once attended a very nice Google workshop about achieving things and achievements in general. And the two key things that I got with this were, it's not bragging, it's based on facts. And that really stuck with me because it's really hard to go out there and say, oh, I did this really well. But if you're presenting facts, then it's not bragging, it's just true. And the other thing is, achievements don't speak for themselves. So they're also going to be very valuable for you and for you standing out as an individual contributor. Right, and I think with these words, we're going to close this talk. I hope you have learned quite something for your next adventures on refactoring and maintaining your application. Yeah.